I'm a 42-year-old man who's found himself entangled in a family drama that has left me questioning everything I believed about loyalty and trust within my own family. My father, who's 64 and a heavy diesel mechanic, has been both my mentor and business partner for over a decade. Recently, though, he revealed something that shattered my world. Let me give you some background. My dad has spent his entire professional life running a small mechanic workshop. As a child, I was captivated by his work and spent many weekends helping him out at the shop. My fascination with mechanics led me to pursue a degree in automotive engineering so I could formally join the family business. Since 2013, I've been working alongside my dad, gradually taking on more responsibilities until I eventually took over the day-to-day operations of the workshop. When I first started, my dad only had one car in the shop and two part-time mechanics. I used my education and skills to implement new strategies that spurred remarkable growth. Over the last 10 years, we've expanded to a workforce of 35 employees and a fleet of 15 service vehicles. Our revenue has skyrocketed, growing from just $250,000 to nearly $7 million annually. While my dad has remained focused on the hands-on work in the shop, I've taken on more of the managerial duties, overseeing the business and ensuring its growth. I've poured the last decade of my life into this family business, believing that one day I would inherit it and continue to build on its success. This business became more than just a job for me. It was my passion, my responsibility. Through all the challenges, I remained dedicated to its future. My older brother Michael, who's 40, chose a different path. He pursued a degree in accounting and carved out a career in the city. Unlike me, he never had any interest in our dad's business. In fact, growing up, he was embarrassed by it. He hated that our father was a mechanic and would often refuse to acknowledge it in front of our friends. When I would spend weekends helping out at the workshop, Michael would get angry, insisting that such work was beneath us. He'd constantly tell me that pursuing a degree in automotive engineering was a dead end, urging me to aim for something more prestigious. Yet, despite Michael's disdain for the family business, my dad has always favored him. This favoritism wasn't always there. When we were younger, my dad showed equal affection to both of us. But things changed when Michael was 15 and contracted pneumonia. It was a scary time. Michael was hospitalized for weeks, and the doctors were worried about his chances of survival. During that time, my dad spent almost every night at the hospital, staying by Michael's side. They grew close during that period, and even after Michael recovered, the bond between them only grew stronger. As we grew up, my dad's favoritism became more and more apparent. One memory in particular sticks out. I had won an award at school, and I was excited to tell my parents about it. My mom hugged me and congratulated me, and my dad smiled warmly. I asked them to attend the award ceremony, and while I knew my mom's demanding job might prevent her from coming, I was hopeful my dad would be there. But when I asked, my dad hesitated. He said he had plans to play basketball with Michael. My mom wasn't happy about it and insisted that he should attend the ceremony with Michael. Reluctantly, my dad agreed. The night before the ceremony, my mom reminded him again. At dinner, Michael, who was sitting with us, asked my dad if he was really canceling their basketball plans. My dad explained they could play another time, but Michael wasn't having it. He threw a fit, complaining that their time together was more important than some stupid award ceremony. The next day, I went to school, hoping my dad would keep his promise. When my name was called, I walked up to the stage to receive my award, scanning the crowd for my father. He wasn't there. I texted my mom, letting her know that Dad never showed up, and she was furious. She had set alarms on his phone and couldn't believe he didn't make it. When I got home, I walked in to find my parents in a heated argument. My mom was furious, demanding to know why my dad missed the ceremony. As I stood there, confused and hurt, my dad mumbled an excuse about losing track of time. But then, Michael walked into the room, casually eating ice cream. That's when I learned the truth. They had gone for ice cream instead of coming to my ceremony. My mom exploded, screaming at both of them for their selfishness. But instead of apologizing, my dad tried to downplay the whole thing, saying it wasn't a big deal and that there would be other award ceremonies in the future. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. How could he just dismiss my accomplishment like that? I tried to brush it off, telling my dad that it was fine, but inside I was devastated. I went to my room and broke down in tears, the hurt and betrayal overwhelming me. My mom came to comfort me, assuring me that my achievement mattered, even if my dad didn't show up. Her words were a small comfort, but the damage was done. This wasn't an isolated incident. My dad's favoritism toward Michael has been a constant throughout my life. Even now, as adults, my dad still sees Michael as his golden child. Despite this, I've continued to work hard, hoping to earn my dad's approval. But things took an even darker turn last year when my dad filed for divorce from my mom. Their marriage had been rocky for years, but I never thought it would end this way. After the divorce, my dad started dating younger women, and a few months ago, he called Michael and me to a family dinner. That's when he dropped the bombshell. He had married his latest girlfriend, Olivia, who's only 30, just a few years younger than me. I was stunned, but my dad wasn't finished. He went on to talk about the future of the family business. I thought he was finally going to tell me that I would inherit the company I had worked so hard to build. But instead, he looked at me and said that since I wasn't married and didn't have children, I wouldn't be inheriting the business. He had decided to leave it all to Michael. I was speechless. After everything I had done for the business, after dedicating the last 10 years of my life to it, my father had chosen Michael, the son who had never cared about the company, to take it over. The betrayal cut deep. Everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed, was for nothing. And now, I'm left wondering if I'll ever be able to rebuild the trust that has been shattered. I was at a loss for words. My trust in my father shattered before my eyes, feeling like a devastating blow to the gut. It was as though everything I had believed in, everything I had worked for, was crumbling right in front of me. As soon as my dad dropped this bombshell, a storm of betrayal and anger surged through me. The world I had spent 10 years building was collapsing in an instant. I glared at him, my jaw clenched, struggling to comprehend the enormity of his decision. Why? I finally managed to ask, my voice shaking with a mixture of hurt and rage. I dedicated my entire life to this venture. Together, we built it. How can you just hand it over to Michael? My dad didn't seem fazed by the chaos he had unleashed. He stood there, calm and detached, as if what he had just done was merely a matter of paperwork. His response was like ice water to the face, freezing any hope I had left of understanding. Michael is married and has children, he said, as though that explained everything. He can grow the company, and he needs the financial stability. His words hit me like a tidal wave. All the years I had spent working late nights, solving crises, securing deals, and building client relationships felt erased in a single moment. I had poured my heart and soul into this business, sacrificed so much to help it grow, and now it was being handed over to my brother simply because he had a family. The injustice of it all threatened to choke me. What about me? I shot back, unable to keep the anger from my voice. What about my dreams? My future? I've thrown everything into this business, and now, because Michael has a wife and kids, you're going to ignore everything I've done? Dad's response was cold, almost rehearsed. "The business goes to your brother," he said firmly. "But you can stay on in your role. You can keep working for Michael." It took all my strength not to explode right then and there. I could feel the injustice of it all coursing through my veins. My fists balled at my sides, the unfairness pressing down on me like a weight I could barely carry. I had been loyal, dedicated. I had done everything right, and now I was supposed to just work for Michael, like some kind of second-class employee in the company I had helped build from the ground up. "This is so unfair," I whispered, the anger rising in my throat. "I've given everything to this business, and now you're going to pretend like none of it matters? You're going to just hand it over to him, without a second thought. I've worked too hard for this." But my father remained unmoved. "This is my decision," he said, with a finality that left no room for argument. I looked at Michael, hoping against hope that he would say something, anything, to acknowledge what was happening. But he stood there silently, refusing to meet my eyes. That hurt almost as much as my father's betrayal. My brother, who I had worked alongside for years, who I had thought might at least understand, had nothing to say. He didn't fight for me, didn't try to make things right. It was as though he was complicit in the entire scheme, perfectly content to let me fall by the wayside while he stepped into the role I had earned. The weight of it all was unbearable. Years of feeling like I had to work twice as hard to prove myself to my father came crashing down around me. This was more than just about business. It was about a lifetime of being treated as though I didn't measure up, about always being in the shadow of the golden child. Finally, I had no fight left. I looked away from my father, the bitter taste of betrayal thick in my mouth. "Fine, Dad," I mumbled, defeated. "If that's what you want." With those words, I walked out of his office, leaving behind everything I had worked for. As I drove home, the reality of what had just happened settled in. I wasn't just losing a business. I was losing my father's respect, his trust, everything I thought we had built together over the years. Later, alone in my apartment, the full weight of the situation hit me like a tidal wave. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the walls, my mind reeling. The business I had spent the last 10 years nurturing, the dream I had poured my heart and soul into, was slipping away. I had never felt so alone. My father's words echoed in my head, twisting the knife deeper. In desperation, I picked up the phone and called my mother. I needed someone to understand. I needed to know that I wasn't going crazy, that what I was feeling was real. She answered on the third ring, her voice warm and familiar. As soon as I heard her, the floodgates opened. I poured out everything, the shock, the betrayal, the anger that had been building inside me ever since my father's announcement. My mother listened quietly as I spoke, her voice growing tense as the story unfolded. "I can't believe he would do this," she said finally, her voice filled with disbelief. "It's completely unfair." Her words were like a bomb on my raw emotions. At least someone understood. At least I wasn't alone in feeling this way. "It's not about the business," I said, my voice breaking. "It's about everything. All the work I've put in. All the years I've spent building this. And now it's all for nothing. I'm being pushed aside like I don't matter." My mother sighed. "I know it feels that way," she said softly. "But maybe this is an opportunity. You've built so much already. You don't need his approval to keep moving forward. Why not start your own business? You have the clients, the skills. You don't need him." Her words planted a seed in my mind. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't need my father to succeed. Maybe I could take everything I had built and start something new, something that was mine alone. For the first time since the meeting, I felt a flicker of hope. The next day, I started making plans. I reached out to several of the clients I had brought in over the years, explaining the situation and telling them that I was planning to start my own business. The response was overwhelming. Many of them expressed shock at my father's decision, but more importantly, they assured me that they would continue working with me, no matter where I went. With their support, I knew I had a real chance. The business wasn't my father's anymore, it was mine. I had built these relationships. I had earned their trust. And now, I was going to use that foundation to create something new. Within a few months, my new company was up and running. The clients who had promised to follow through on their support did exactly that. And before long, my business was thriving. Meanwhile, the family business began to falter. Without me there to hold it together, Michael struggled to maintain the clients he had inherited, and slowly but surely, the company started to crumble. It didn't take long for my father to realize his mistake. He called me several times, each message more desperate than the last, begging me to return and save the company. But I ignored them all. I was done. I had my own path now, and I wasn't going to look back. A few months after I left, my father sent me a long letter. In it, he accused me of abandoning the family, of being selfish for not supporting Michael. He blamed me for the company's downfall, insisting that if I had stayed, everything would have been fine. He even mentioned that his new wife, Olivia, was threatening to leave him now that they couldn't maintain their lavish lifestyle. I read the letter, feeling a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction. My father's world was falling apart, and for once, I wasn't the one holding it together. He had made his choice, and now he was living with the consequences. As for me, my new business was flourishing. I had built something from the ground up, and it was mine. No one could take that away from me. My clients trusted me, my employees respected me, and my mother had been a constant source of support throughout it all. We had grown closer in the months since I left the family business, and her encouragement had been invaluable. Looking back, I realized that my father's betrayal had been a blessing in disguise. It had forced me to step out of his shadow and build something of my own. I had risen from the ashes of our broken relationship, stronger and more resilient than ever. Now, 6 months later, I'm not only thriving in my career, but I'm also planning to propose to my girlfriend. She's been my rock through all of this, and I know she's the one I want to spend the rest of my life with. For the first time in a long time, I feel at peace. I've created my own success, built my own future, and I've learned that I don't need anyone's approval to be happy.